Good afternoon. I'm both excited and nervous to be sharing my story and my experiences with you today. Excited because my goal is to be able to give back, to be able to contribute as much as possible in any significant way. And nervous because, well, actually, I'm not nervous, because I've learned over the years that this emotion is just the excitement of the unknown. The symptoms are the same: the increased heart rate, the feeling of just not knowing what is about to unfold, or the thought that you just want to either jump right in or turn around and run. There is hundreds of examples of these emotions that I can share with you today, and how you can learn to control these emotions. But to begin, I want to first tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the middle of a war. I was born in 1984 in Iran, a country that was torn in war. My first memories of life was seeing planes flying overhead, bombing the city that I was in. My first memory was looking up at these planes as my mother frantically tried to escape the city, clutching me in her arms. We had to live for quite some time with family and friends on the outskirts of the city, and at some point even living in a tent, whilst I remember hearing the wolves howling in the distance. I went through some of the most frightening and incredible experiences only as a child. By the time I was 4, the war had ended, and my family did everything they could to rebuild our lives, to be able to start fresh. By the time I was 9 years old, we moved to West London, where we started a new life. The difficulties of beginning a new life in a new country, learning a new language, learning to live in a diverse community was bad enough, but on top of that, I had the trauma of coming from a war zone. And I did not realize at that moment that it would impact my life so much, because I had buried the trauma of the past, and I was just trying to make the most of my life. I struggled in school, but I did everything I could to educate myself constantly. I read books, and I aimed to better myself. I cared about self-development. So I continued to work hard, and I worked in many different fields. I started in retail, I went on to entertainment, I went into sports, and finally into business, and more specifically into business sales. And that's where my self-development continued, until finally I landed my dream job. I was working for a multinational company with revenues well into the billions. The job came with a company car, a pension plan, and a great future. Everything was working out great. And it was made even better because only a few months prior, I had married the love of my life. My wonderful wife, Sana, and I were married only a few months before. Everything was working out. We were living happily. She moved into my family home, and we were planning on saving and beginning a life together. But life had other plans. On June 14th, 2017, a great fire devastated Grenfell Tower and took 72 lives of my neighbors and friends, and made hundreds more homeless. It was on that devastating night at 1 a.m. when I received a phone call from my dear friend and neighbor. He screamed down the phone, "Get out! Get out! Grenfell's on fire!" It sent chills down my spine. After I pleaded for him to get my mum out of the tower, I began to make my journey back home. I knew that my wife was safe because she was staying at her parents' house that night, because I was away in a training seminar in Southend on the east coast of England. And I knew my brother was safe because he was working away from home at that time. But my mum was home alone. The woman that had saved my life as a child and had brought me to this country and given me so many opportunities and a life that I deserved was in danger. That 1.5-hour drive made me question every decision in my life that had led me to that point. Why was I not there for her? The fear drove me home, and by the time I got back to Grenfell, At 2:30 a.m., the tower was totally engulfed. I could not believe what I was seeing. It was like being in a nightmare. I saw blurry faces as I ran down the street, as hundreds and thousands of people were outside, looking up in shock. Some of them silent from the shock of what they were seeing, and some of them screaming in terror. It was an unbelievable thing. Until finally I found my mum alive. But my nightmare didn't end there. I realized what was happening and there was nothing to be done. I could not believe what I was seeing in the middle of London, one of the richest areas in the world. Something that reminded me of the war zone that I came from as a child. It took me back to that young boy that had experienced so much trauma and devastation in my life. But at that moment, when I was fully angry, and I could not control the anger that I was feeling, I remembered the love I had for my community. I was inspired by the people that were pouring into the streets to take care of one another, to help one another. So that love and that anger mixed together to become a passion to help, a passion to become a solution to the problem I was seeing. It would have been easy for me to run and hide, to let the trauma and the fear of what I was experiencing take over me. But at that moment, the true self, the real me, stood up and made a difference. I started to gather my neighbors. We created a WhatsApp group that brought families together and helped those that had been lost in the mayhem find one another. We started to set up meetings. I went from the person that was sitting on the side of the street with my head in my hands, not knowing what to do, to suddenly being able and having the ability to bring together government, charities, the Prime Minister, other organizations, the National Health Service, to be able to provide support for those that needed it most. I was able to help bring a voice to those that needed to be heard, the survivors and the bereaved families that had lost so much, the people that I cared about. One of the most difficult things that we had to go through at that moment was the realization that no one was going to make a difference in our lives. So I decided at that moment that I was going to be the difference in my life and in the lives of those around me. I realized that if I can make a difference today, then hopefully more people will be inspired to make a difference in their own lives and stand up for themselves. We were not going to allow people to label us as victims. Instead, we were going to label ourselves as survivors, as people that were going to overcome this and to become stronger because of it. Not only that, we're going to make significant changes that were going to help other people in society and in our nation. Within 5 days of the fire, with the help of my neighbors, we founded Grenfell United. We were more organized than the government. We were able to bring meetings together, to come up with solutions and ideas that were going to help the situation, that were going to bring some sort of answer to the families that were asking the questions. I believe that every person has a true self, the real you. And at that moment, I was ready, able, and willing to be my raw self. I had gone from war to raw. I had made sure that I did not let the fear of not being good enough, not being experienced enough, capable enough to make the difference. I didn't let those fears of what other people thought of me and the labels that they put on me to become the difference. Instead, I chose what I was capable of, and I was able to become that real self that was able to move forward as if autonomously. I realized this because at the moment of maximum pressure, I was able to stand up and be counted and to become a voice in my community. One of the teachers that I have to thank for everything that I've learned so far is an author and an expert in personal development called Tony Robbins. I was a big fan of his work prior to the fire, and when at a time of most need, I went back to the lessons I had learned. I realized that the lessons I had taught myself were becoming so useful to me. A friend of mine, someone I had met recently, was performing a concert in Florida. And he sent me an email to say that he's performing this concert and none other than Tony Robbins had come backstage to meet him for the first time because he was a fan of his music. So he decided to send me a message because he had told Tony how much his work had helped me to become a voice in my community. At a time when I was really feeling the anxiety and the trauma, when I was at the worst point in my life, it was about 2-3 months after the fire when the pressure of leading and becoming a leader in such a traumatizing moment was taking hold of me. I received this email, this timely email, and this is the message that came with it.
Shahin, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, I hear what you've done there, what you're doing to help people after the fire, and I'm here. Marcus told me all about you. He's so proud of you as a dear friend and told me my work in some way has touched you, and I'm really grateful for that because you're touching other people at one of the most difficult times, being the chairman of this group. So I'd love to meet you someday. Whoops, this thing's going to short. I'd love to meet you someday. I'm going to come, I think in March or April, May. I'll figure out when it is, and I'll let Marcus know, and I'll invite you to come to the seminar, and maybe we can have a lunch together. I'd love to meet you in person. Take good care and keep up your great works. God bless. Bye-bye.
This meant the world to me. And it led me to meeting Tony and being able to, instead of fearing rejection, asking him the question, would you mentor me? Because I wanted to become a better leader. I wanted to do more, and I wanted to contribute to others. I saw how much I could impact, and I needed to know how I could do that even better. So I asked him the question. And then 6 months later, I received an invitation to go to Florida and to work with the man himself, to learn directly from him. So I packed my bags, I booked my flight and hotel, and I went to Florida with a goal, with a purpose, that I was going to leave with a new purpose in life. I was going to reinvent myself as a champion for change, as someone that was going to stand in front of people and help them to understand their potentials, to be able to contribute more because one day they might be able to help others. We are all part of this mass consciousness, and your consciousness is connected to everyone else's. And it's only when you actually allow this consciousness of yours that knows the right things every day in your life, you know the things that you need to be doing every day. But we let fear and other excuses get in the way of that. We actually stop ourselves from being able to achieve more in our life and to feel fulfilled. This creates a conflict. And this conflict continues, and if it continues, it becomes a norm. And these ideas create fallacies in your life. Things like, I can't, I'm too shy, I don't have the resources, I don't have the ability. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What are they going to think? Who am I to do this? These are false fallacies that are created most likely out of fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure. I would hate to imagine what would have been if I had let those fears stop me after the Grenfell Tower fire. I want to share with you one of the best exercises that I learned on my journey. And it was that I want you to imagine, I want you to imagine the best version of yourself. I want you to think on that. And when you get home, I want you to write down 3 of these attributes, 3 of your best attributes: kindness, caring, a go-getter, hardworking, whatever it may be, write them down. Acknowledge them, celebrate them, and make sure that you continue to build on that. But then I want you to think about 3 negative attributes that you do not share with the best version of yourself, that are stopping you from being the best version of yourself. Overindulgence, laziness, greed, and in some cases, fear. And in most cases, fear of failure. How is that impacting your life? How is that stopping you from being the person that you can be? So I want to challenge you. I want you to leave today feeling that you can make this difference in your life, that you're going to make a difference not just for yourself but for others, for the ability that one day you will be able to contribute not just to your friends and family but to people all around you. It's only when we realize that the only thing stopping us from achieving our goals and feeling fulfilled in life and being the best person that we can be is ourselves, only then can we make a change. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you today to be the real you. I want you to be the real you and to find the raw you. Thank you very much.